Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Ankrum Special Planning Board meeting of February 26, 2026. This is a work session. The public is welcome to listen, but there's no public participation at this meeting. So, Sarah, can you call the roll, please? Present. Present.
Present.
Bill Bassett,
Present.
Here.
Sarah Porter, Christine Brown. Don.
Okay, so we have five members here. We have a quorum. So we're able to proceed. Any conflicts?
No.
No. Correspondence?
No.
Nothing new? Okay. So this is old business, Homeland Towers, special use permit 24007. First gonna ask Kim to give us a little update on, there were two issues of discussion at the last meeting. One was segmentation and one was the co-location issue. So could you just fill us in on the,
So the question was raised at last meeting, regarding the height of the tower and whether the planning board should be considering the 100 foot, which is what is currently before you in the application, or if you should be considering the potential higher, tower. Oh, sorry. There we go. Or if you should be considering the higher tower that could potentially happen if an eligible facilities request should come in the future. That could potentially raise the tower height to 120 feet, I believe. So I did look into the issue further. At the last meeting, we had provided you an opinion that you should be looking at the 100-foot tower height. And I did look further into this issue, and we confirmed that that's what our opinion is, that you should be looking at the 100-foot tower. With segmentation, you should be looking at it if there's a possibility that there's a larger portion of the property coming. However, the courts have said that when that larger portion is speculative or hypothetical, it's not segmentation. And because the eligible facilities request could happen, but there's no plans for it, Mr. Kenny and Homeland Towers said that there's no plans for that now. It's not part of the application. It is speculative and hypothetical. So you should be looking at the 100-foot tower. Regarding the co-locations, those co-location, the four co-location areas that are below the height of the tower, those are part of your application. Again, those are part of the larger project, but it's known that that is what is proposed at this time. And the Homeland Tower has provided photo simulation showing the maximum build out, showing one tower with Verizon on it, and then the four possible locations below that. So consider the 100-foot tower with the co-locations on there, but not a possible eligible facilities request, because that may or may not happen in the future.
thank you, Kim. So we were proceeding correctly and we'll continue to proceed the way we were going. Nan, you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Do you want to pick us up where we left off and see if we can finish the EAF?
Yes. So just as a quick reminder from last meeting where the board spent time talking about the remaining questions on the part 2 of the full environmental assessment form, which were questions 9, 17, and 18. And from the discussion of those 3 remaining questions, in question 9, there were 4 items, A, C, D, and E, that were identified as potentially moderate to large impacts. There were no impacts identified in question 17, which is consistency with plans and local zoning. And then 18 had 2 items that were identified as moderate to large, 18E and F. So with that, the board has gone through all of the questions from part 2. And so the next step in seeker is to then take those items that received a potential moderate to large impact, and make a determination about whether any of those are actually significant impacts. So it's in the emphasis being on significance is that there might be impacts that you identify that are mitigated or that even remain, and you have determined that they're not significant for a variety of reasons. So your job in part three is really to take though, and those were the only moderate to large impacts that were identified um, in part two. So there's 6 items that would be the topic of discussion in part three. And so the part three really leads you through thinking about it kind of more holistically, where it asks you um, to look at the magnitude of the impact, which really gets at how small of a large area is impacted, or how much of the population may be impacted. So we looked at the kind of the size of the impact. The second thing that we look at in part three is the duration. Is the impact that you've identified likely to be short term, like for instance during construction, and then the impact goes away? Is it medium term, that after X number of time, the impact is either diminished or goes away, either because of operation or ceasing of operation? Or is it long term, so it goes on for, years and decades? And is it whether it's irreversible, whether that's a permanent impact or not? And then the third category that helps us decide whether something is significant or not is how likely is that impact to occur. So sometimes when we do seeker, there's maybes. Well, if this happens, then an impact may occur, versus something that you know will be an impact right from the beginning. So in likelihood, we kind of look at, is it an unlikely impact to occur? Is it possible that the impact might occur, or is it probable that that impact will actually occur? Um, and then we look at how important is it? Is it not in the end, in the big scheme of things, does it turn out to be not an important impact, or it might be moderately or fairly important? So the job of the planning board is to take into consideration all that you know about the application, the materials that have been submitted, the analysis that you've been given, the public comment that you received, everything you've known about the project and heard and thought about during this application, along with the information from the full environmental assessment form part one, can help you identify the magnitude, the duration, and the likelihood of whether any of these 6 are significant impacts. So there's no numerical type formula that is really out there to help you. It's not a mathematical kind of decision. It's really comprehensively looking at all of the information that you know about the application and the site, and making a decision on those items. And there's a couple different ways of going about this. I know that the board in the past has used that little table with the matrix. We go through each one and talk about whether it's a moderate or the magnitude of the impact and so forth. But we were thinking that maybe, because we've had a lot of discussions about the visual impacts, which are where you landed on potential moderate to large impacts. So I thought that maybe it would be important to go around the table for the planning board members to articulate we asked you to think about these items from last meeting, and I'd like to hear you each offer your opinion on what you think is the significance, or if you want to break it down into its components of magnitude, duration, and likelihood, with some thoughts about why you feel that way, so we can start building our rationale for whatever decision might come from the board. So, I would suggest that we go one by one and see what everybody thinks, and we can listen respectfully, and let each person have their say about what they feel, if you're comfortable with that. If you're not, we can go back to the chart and have the same kind of discussion as a group.
Are we comfortable going individually? And who wants to start? Oh, that narrows down the choices.
I was just looking at the telecommunications law, trying to think about how to phrase some of this. So this is a special unique thing because it's in the scenic overlook area, so it's different from other areas. And we also have this telecommunication law that says things like a tower should be, to the maximum extent practical, have least adverse visual effect on environment, visual view shed. At the same time, we also have in the zoning code that you can have a cell tower in the skies at 100 feet, but it also references back the ability to camouflage it and to hide it. So the question that comes to mind is the tower as it's proposed meeting that, and as it's proposed, what is the visual impact of that? Because it clearly is a cell tower. Can't hide that in its proposed form. You definitely see it as a tower. The height is significant, but not overly high. So there are limitations in the view shed to it and how you see it. It's not in the middle of the valley. It's on the edge of the valley. So you don't see it standing out on a hilltop or in the center of the valley. So to me, the magnitude is less. I think the magnitude could be much less if it really was more camouflaged as to the extent practical. So that's really that in terms of longevity, well, it's going to be there as long as it's going to be there. And if it comes down, it's going to be gone. It's not. I don't think it's going to leave any lasting damage. Once it comes down, the footprint of the tower itself on the ground is fairly small. I mean, compared to other things that get built, it's actually a pretty small ground footprint. So this is really about what you're seeing and whether it, in my view, whether it's meeting what's in the telecommunications code about camouflage. That's really kind of the issue to me. How are we making the best efforts to hide? So trying to get back to this, as it's presented, I would see that the magnitude is moderate, if that's a usable term. It's not high to me. It's not nothing. It's in that moderate range.
Okay.
Well spoken.
Yeah, and I would say that I agree with a lot of what you just said. That's, I think that's like the type of stuff that I wrote down. I mean, it's not really in character with that specific area of the valley, but yet we do live among cell towers in our area and in our region. And it is ugly, it is big, it is what it is. But I do think that you're not really gonna see it from the rail trail unless you specifically look for it. And that it will be visible from 22, but you're just gonna be driving by. So I would also agree that it's a low or moderate effect.
Jessica?
So I trying to figure out how to make this height. I spent some time kind of like laying out our zoning law, sounds like everyone else did as well, in comparison to our comprehensive plan, and then also looking at the specific scenic corridor overlay zone pieces. And, you know, much like I communicated in our last meeting, the thing that I just kept coming back to is that to me it is a significant change of the character of the valley and in the scenic corridor overlay zone. And while the zoning does allow for 100-foot cell phone tower, much like Tom said, it also is a, does it need to be that? What are their camouflage options? Location is better. And so at the end of the day, what I came back to is that I still think it is a significant impact in the county.
Jessica, can you repeat that last bit? I didn't hear you from online.
Just that I maintain my. Oh, no, it's not on. Before you die. Oh, no, just that I'm maintaining where I was at our last meeting, that I think it is a significant impact.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, I sort of looked at this again, vis-a-vis four things that I was looking at. It's the town of Ancrum zoning law, the SCAS law, the Ancrum comp plan, and the visual assessments. And I think it's got a pretty, it's a significant impact. It's a big cell tower in the middle of what we've designated as this scenic zone. It's the only one we have in Ancrum that we've dedicated as a scenic zone. So I think, it's not really camouflaged at this point. It's just a big cell tower, and painting it brown is not really going to camouflage a 100-foot pole with antennas on it. And I know we talked about potentially making it a silo to mitigate that effect, making it look more in character with the town, because it is out of character where it is. I understand obviously the need for cell service as well, but I think that I would say that it requires further review. I think it's a pretty significant impact vis-a-vis our visual scenic view laws.
Okay, yes. That leaves me. Obviously, we've been following this for a year and been part of it, obviously, and there will be an impact whenever you construct anything. There's always an impact. Is it severe? I don't believe it's severe. It's something probably 10 feet wide, and it is 100 feet tall, but as far as the camouflaging of it, I don't think we went through the options of the flagpole, which has a lot of technical issues, and the silo would be way out of proportion with silos in the area. 100-foot tall silo, even an 80-foot tall silo surely would look out of place. So yes, there's an impact. At worst, I think it's moderate. Well, there we are.
Does Aaron have anything to say?
Let me see.
We have words of
Is Aaron on?
significant and moderate. How do we
Yeah.
match those together?
So taking into, so looking at your comments were really focused on the magnitude of the impact. Is there general agreement that the impact is long-term and likely to occur?
Yeah.
So in terms of that part of the discussion, is there a consensus? I didn't hear everybody speak about those other elements.
Well, it is
Yes.
long-term. It's not
That's
going
by
away.
definition.
Yeah, it's not going away anytime soon. If there's new technology that eventually replaces towers, I would imagine it would get removed. But is that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? There's no way to predict.
Okay. So I guess, when if you look at the from what my notes, I have that two of you felt that they were significant impacts. Two of you said they were moderate, and one of you said kind of low to moderate. So, um, it really comes down to, it may come down to a vote. Is that your, if we take the moderates together, that we have maybe three moderates and two significant? Um, do you want to use that as a straw poll as to where you're heading? Do you feel there needs to be more discussion about the rationale behind those directions that you've given?
Can I ask, is when people say the word significant, do they mean large or do they mean moderate? And
Well,
because I feel like we don't have a
Not well.
definition of
Yeah.
that term to match them up.
well, significance comes from the decision about whether something is a large in magnitude in terms of large in scale, that it's a long-term impact, that it's a likely impact to occur, and it's important to the community. Kind of taken together leads you to what significance is.
Well, isn't
The
the end,
significance has got to be in the context of Ankrum, not of somewhere else.
isn't the end result whether we issue a negative deck or a positive deck?
Well, right. I mean, the end result of this is that if you decide that the visual impacts that you have identified are significant, then that results in a positive declaration, which means that there would be an environmental impact statement to be written.
I think one statement for a vote statement, one statement up there.
Can you make a statement? Okay, yeah, freedom of speech, go ahead.
Very great. Was a lot of what I've heard tonight was regarding the camouflaging techniques in the code. The decision tonight is not on whether or not we meet the standards in the code. The decision tonight is whether or not this rises to a significant impact based on SECRA. We've had definitions of what visibility and what aesthetic impact is. And all I've heard tonight is about whether or not you can see the tower. I just want to put that into context.
I can read you from the Seeker workbook. Let me read you the language that DEC has in there under magnitude and how they describe the difference between a large impact and a moderate impact. So the large impact is described as an impact that may cover, hold on, I'm just gonna move my screen over here, that may cover larger areas beyond the parcel in the neighborhood or community, or impact larger numbers of people. Size in acres is not the only aspect of this. Impacts on large areas of land or large numbers of people would usually be classified as a large impact. The resources affected by a large impact often have broad local or regional concern and often are activities or resources that are regulated or protected by some local, state, or national agency. The moderate impact and magnitude these are impacts that are of a size that will likely result in more impacts on one or more environmental resources, but are more localized and not regional in nature. Moderate impacts can occur when the project affects a portion of a parcel or even a larger area extending to a small area beyond the parcel. Moderate environmental impacts may be either isolated, only in one location, or of a neighborhood concern. Impact of moderate magnitude would likely affect a moderate number of people. Size in acreage or people is not the only aspect of magnitude, however. And then it goes on to talk about that projects that affect a small area of land, but the resource being impacted is locally rare, for example, then the actual impact may be large. When reviewing an impact's magnitude, the reviewing agency should consider the size of the impact in the resource as well as the scope and context of the project. The resources affected by moderate impact may often have broad local concern and often are activities or resources that are regulated or protected by some local, state, and national agency. So that's the description that they have on just the difference between moderate and large magnitude of impact. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
For me, it kind of puts it in moderate. It helps it.
Yeah.
In that definition.
Definitely. It's not large.
I disagree. I wrote out in one section of what my things are specifically about the magnitude and importance of the impacts. I was trying to, again, overlay our zoning code, our comprehensive plan, and the like outlay of like what we're trying to look at, and so how each of those, you know, a little Venn diagram, if you will. And so what I said is that the scenic corridor overlay elevates the importance of the visual resources along Route 22 in the Highland Valley. Our comprehensive plan elevates the preservation of rural character and scenic views as core county policy. And our zoning law codifies those protections. So given the height of the structure that we're looking at 100 feet, it's permanent, meaning it's going to be here for a while. The industrial character of it within an agricultural rural area, the confirmed public visibility, because it is confirmed that it will be publicly visible by a large number of people. And the fact that this location is within a legislatively protected scenic corridor, there's a rational basis to conclude that the magnitude and importance of the visual and community character may be large.
So I understand everything you're saying there. And I guess the part for me was when she was talking about large was the number of people that were impacted. And when I look at that number of people, you have the people using the trail, the people living there, and some people will care about it, some people won't care about it. And the idea of large, it sounded like it had to have a much bigger to me, I think of large, I think of cement plants or smokestacks or something that, really something that really is creates a bigger environmental disturbance. So that's one reason I can't go large, because I feel like it's going to the maximum. But
I think it's a combination of those pieces, because like if it was, like I know last meeting you were talking about the fact that there's a cell tower at Catamount, right? Right. But there's one that's very similar to the design of what we have, like with the monopole and the things there. And so almost there every single day. So you're looking at it, you're like, okay, but it's mostly behind you when you're going down the mountain. It's also on a mountain covered with hundreds of metal poles, and the view is the other direction. And so in that context, and it's also shorter. You're like, okay, it's very visible, but it's not.
Oh, there's two cell towers there. One of them is buried in the woods. So there's three. Okay, I know.
The main one that you can see.
There's one that's on the top of the hill. It's like
Yeah.
sticks out like
Yeah.
a cell tower.
But again, I'm trying to, because I know we had a big conversation last time about it's all of the things. It's not just the one thing. So I'm trying to think like, okay, 22 is the main arterial that everyone's taking up here for the most part, either that or it's fine. So that's a large number of people. And even if we're saying it might not be significantly long, they're not looking at it for hours.
No.
They're still all seeing it,
Mhm.
but it's also very specifically in a scenic or that's protected. And so that combination of things to me makes it a larger impact, because we're like essentially irrevocably changing the character of that piece of land by putting it industrial thing in a non-industrial area that will be seen by everyone, which is a lot of people. So that's just where I'm getting that determination for myself.
The
Yeah,
scenic
I mean, I
overlook
understand.
corridor is a large area. This is in a very small portion. Yes, you're gonna see it, but the scenic overlook corridor is the mountainside. And it's not, you're gonna see the tower briefly when you drive by it. It's already been said, you really can't see it from the rail trail. So I mean, I don't see it as a major impact. I mean, you're gonna drive by it. That's it. You're not blocking the scenic overlook corridor to any magnitude at all. It's there, yes, but is it blocking your view? Is this, is it life changing? Is it, is it gonna ruin somebody's
I think it,
quality of life because we permitted a cell tower? I don't think so.
I still believe that it changed the world forever.
I'm not saying,
It will be.
I'm not
Yes, it
saying.
will. So do a lot of other things that happen around here.
It comes down to magnitude, this issue of magnitude. It's not that everything you're saying is right in terms of what impacts are. The thing is this, it's like the magnitude of those impacts. How many people actually will notice? I don't know, but I've heard from, I know we have mixed opinions in what we've gotten. We've got people who want cell tower, don't, some people who care, and some people don't care. And like I said, it doesn't make noise. It doesn't
Doesn't blink.
Doesn't
Yeah,
move.
it doesn't blink. It's not visually, you can't see it from everywhere. So I have a problem going to large because it's just not that. I like this, this is my own personal thing. I like to save large for things that are.
I guess I'm confused about, Dan, you can help us here, is that, we're needing to vote if we're making a determination of A or C tonight. And so I don't know how much significance there is in us narrowing down between moderate and large. Because if, are you guys saying moderate means A, that there's no significant impacts? Is that your vote?
That's a good question.
Because we might be splitting hairs.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no universally accepted measure of significance. It's really putting all of those pieces together. Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
That's okay. I mean, you're right. It is a combination, but I just wanted to say that a negative declaration is a finding that there are no significant adverse impact from the action. Okay. A positive declaration, you've identified significant impacts, and that's the next step would be to go to an environmental impact study, the scope of which would be to study the significant adverse environmental impacts that have been identified. Make sense, Bill?
Which would be how many people see it or how many?
Yeah.
Well, the scope of your environmental impact statement would be centered around the questions, the 6 moderate to large impacts that you identified in the EAF Part 2, and then we've kind of narrowed the debate down to the issue of magnitude. And how the purpose of an environmental impact statement would be to study that further to see whether there are techniques that can be brought to bear that would bring the magnitude down to the maximum extent possible.
So
In that regard, I mean, for me, I can't say insignificant. I said moderate. I said moderate because I felt like there is an impact. So I can't say that no insignificant to me. It means there's nothing.
yeah,
I'm not here to persuade you to one thing or the other. I'm just trying to help clarify
Yeah.
what your decision is.
So just to be clear in our flow chart, if we say that we vote C that this does have a significant adverse impact on the environment, does that just mean that we are opening this up to further study?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not a final decision of approval. That's still the site plan and special use permit. This is just a different a different avenue of environmental review.
And
And-
just oh, go ahead.
And if we do, I just, on the converse, as if we do a neg deck, then what?
If you issue a negative declaration, the environmental review portion of the review is finished.
Is finished.
And then you'll move on to looking at the meeting the criteria under the
Got it.
site plan review and special use permit. So the other thing I wanted to say is that the general purpose of seeker is to identify significant adverse environmental impacts and to try to mitigate those to the maximum extent practicable. It's under normal circumstances, seeker is not a process that ends up affecting whether the project can go ahead or not. There are instances where that happens, but what that occurs in a case where after environmental review, it's determined by the lead agency that the significant environmental impacts that have been identified just can't be mitigated sufficiently. And but those cases are pretty rare. Most of the time, what seeker is shooting for is to bring about mitigation that reduces the significant impacts to the maximum extent practical. That's the language that's used.
And that's kind of what we're all shooting for, I'd imagine, right? Is to reduce the significant impact. So is there anything, why, I'm going to just say, why wouldn't we vote C to go ahead and figure out how to reduce this, what we think is this impact?
Yeah, but I voted, what would we change?
Yeah.
To reduce the impact? We've explored everything.
I don't know that everybody feels that same way though.
Certainly some of us do. Reducing the height affects the broadcast capacity.
Maybe
You can't move it. So it is where it is. We got a choice between a lattice tower and a monopole tower. I don't know what else we can explore.
I understand what you're saying in terms of the options that are out there, but I feel like in the process, we're kind of stuck in going in one direction and then having to get to the second question to the extent practical. I don't know if we can smash them both together.
And they want to stay real quick.
But
The purpose of a pause declaration review would be literally what we're discussing now. What would be the process for mitigating further? We kind of already done that when we've hired a visual expert to review that. He proposed different different design alternatives. We added one, the lattice tower, based on his suggestion, and we gave reasons why we couldn't do the other ones. The board also decided that one of the ones, the silo, would not be fitting. So I understand not wanting to say that you like this tower and you're feeling like this decision and saying you like this tower. It's not saying it's not a significant impact in a vacuum. It's in the terms and in the context of SECRA. That's really your decision here. It's based on law.
Well, I mean, I agree with Tom that we get stuck in this thing where we decide there is an impact, but then we have to say that there's no significance to it. Because that's the only option we have.
It's not.
Well, I don't think you should term it as that there's no significance.
But that's
You're saying that you have identified potential.
an adverse impact. That's our choice, or the other choice is that it does.
That's a term of art under SECRA. You can't use it by the Oxford dictionary.
Right, and I think the point I was trying to make is that if you make a declaration that there's it's a negative declaration, that doesn't mean that there's no impacts. It means that the impacts that you found have been mitigated as much as possible, and that you've determined that those impacts don't rise to a higher level of evaluation. It doesn't mean that you're not saying there's no impact with a negative declaration.
Right.
So I don't think it's fair to say it's a choice between saying no impact and some impact. It's really a choice of, have you mitigated the impacts that you have identified so that you don't feel they're important anymore?
I would say significant, if I may.
Yes.
man. And if I may, I would like to just read a little bit more guidance on specific aesthetic impacts. So an aesthetic impact occurs when there is a detrimental effect on the perceived beauty of a place. A significant aesthetic impact are those that cause the diminishment of the public enjoyment and the appreciation of the resource, or one that impairs the quality of the place. And then you have to consider when you're doing that, the magnitude and importance questions that Nan went over as well. And then you also have to consider the context, right? The context is a key element of that. And it's not just the size alone. But it's the guidance is saying that you can have aesthetic impacts that are not necessarily significant. And so whether they rise to the level of significance is a judgment that you all need to make, but it needs to, cause the diminishment of the public enjoyment of the place.
Oh, if I can, I know it's a lot. I brought up, the economic impact and questions about how that can change. And I know we've gone back and forth on how visible it's gonna be from the rail trail, et cetera, and the point. I don't think that we can fully understand that impact at this point in time. But again, we all know it's going to be visible in some capacity. In our plan, one of the things it says is to improve the town's economic vitality by preserving one of the significant scenic resources within the town and enhancing the town's attractiveness to visitors as well as its citizens. We're looking at the fact that the scenic corridor overlay zone is not just something that is pretty to look at, it's also an economic resource for our area because it attracts people who live here and it attracts people who visit here. The Harlem Valley Agricultural Corridor, it supports working farms. There's still some there. It attracts visitors, which in turn supports local businesses. It contributes to the town's desirability as a rural community. And I think that does, like I said last time, putting an industrial structure in a rural agricultural area changes it. Regardless of how visible it is, regardless of the design it is, if there's nothing there now, and then we add this thing, we're the ones changing the very character of that space.
That can't be the state.
Okay, Adrian, I'm sorry, if you're gonna speak, I'm gonna, time you wanted to speak, you're gonna have to.
That we should have no building there at all. We should have a law that says you can't build anything there, because I agree with you that anything is gonna change it.
So
But that's not the way it is right now.
I understand that, so I'm just laying out the research I did, where I'm at. This is one viewpoint for people to consider if they would like.
And is the reason that we're sort of hearing why we don't want a pause deck is just because we don't want to do this anymore?
No.
We don't want any more research? Because I guess I really don't understand then what the downside of a positive declaration is. And that just could be me not understanding.
Can I just add something that might be a little helpful to both Phil and Jessica? So this is from the Seeker Handbook, kind of talks about, it's a Q&A about positive declarations, negative declarations. One of the questions says, are there standards or thresholds for a positive declaration? The answer is yes. A lead agency must prepare a pause deck if it finds, based on the information in the EAF, that one or more adverse environmental impact may be significant. The following are also considerations. The significant impacts must relate to environmental effect. Economic or social factors do not constitute a basis for a positive declaration. The lead agency has taken a hard look at the relevant impacts in assessing potential for significance. The basis for the pause deck is regionally consistent with other determinations that you have made similarly. This is kind of the first of this application, so that might not be applicable here. But then the fourth one says, whether the project as proposed includes mitigation measures that would eliminate one or more of the potentially significant adverse impacts or reduce one of the more impacts or level of non-significance. That's kind of what Nan was saying and George was saying, is that you can also consider the mitigations if that's enough to kind of take it out of that significant impacts. But going to what Jessica was saying about, economic and social factors, that shouldn't be the basis for it's a fair assessment, but it's not part of the C.
Is significant.
The environmental part, yeah.
Yes, you can't separate the two in this situation, I don't believe.
Well, I'm saying that you're not supposed to be considering the economic or social tourism or anything like that.
So
Visibility, that's one thing, I understand, and character, feel, rural character, that's something.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But as I said last meeting, I don't think people are not going to come to Ankrum if we erect the cell tower. I don't think there's any financial impact. I don't think.
but wait, but
How do you
apparently that doesn't
understand?
matter. Wait, apparently that
It doesn't matter.
Right?
It doesn't matter. And how do you
That's what the law
understand?
is.
How do you study that?
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. If that's the law, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? We can't take that into account because it's the law. So we have to,
But the other half of my statement, it's not going to
It's-
prevent people from coming to Ankrum.
I know, but it doesn't matter
Well,
whether it does or doesn't, because if that's what Kim just read us as the law, we have to focus on just at this point, the visual, right? I mean, I think.
Well, the environmental is.
Well, the environmental is the visual, yes.
Visual.
Yes, it's just the visual, right?
It's all tied up.
And again, so my question is, I'm still hung up on if there's a POSDEC or a neg def, what is the practical application of either of those decisions? One is we don't do any further study on the visual assessment, and one is we do further studies. And I realize you said we've done a lot of studies. I understand that we have, but I'm just trying to understand what the ramifications of each of these decisions are, of A or C.
Well, what else could we get out of, what other additional study would provide information to us to help us?
In terms of a visual, right? Casting in terms of a visual impact.
Well, that's what we're,
Question last year, we've been doing this plus or minus on my own chart. About the necessity for the 100-foot, and potentially if we were to lower it, then you could put it or, that's come up many times. I mean, when we first started this also, I believe in one of the early meetings, the maps were trying to show that we were trying to get service like all the way to the top of the mountains and all the way out, and then it was determined that that wasn't, and now we can really.
So
service along 22, so that's the.
So height is an issue. I'm just trying to pull out what else can we get out of anything else that we'd ask for? That's sort of what we're looking for. So the question of, can it work at a lower height? What could, yeah, what's the loss versus the gain of going lower? And so we have studies showing propagation, how far it goes, but we don't, I don't think we have studies showing what would happen if it went down to 80 feet.
Excuse me,
But-
we do
Yeah,
have that.
yeah, we went over
Had an
that, I
expert
thought.
opinion that says it's a height of 100 feet. I know I'm in, but that's in your record.
I was waiting for you to do that.
it is, we
We're trying to
talked
get
about that, though.
We're trying to get service to Boston Corners, by lowering it, that's not gonna help.
No, I
No, I mean, it's a two-edged
I know,
sword.
this is, all I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get to the
public can't speak.
I'm trying to get to the factual pieces that we can go over and ask for. What, is there any, so height is one thing and what it looks like is another, and we've ruled out the alternative tower types, and I don't know if there's anything else out there that we haven't at least looked at.
I do just want to say, going to the height question, you do have Cityscape available if you have any questions on that.
Yes, Cityscape, are you there?
Let me go see.
This is Anthony Lepore from Cityscape.
Hi, Elizabeth's here too.
Hello. So we looked at tower height. Can you fill us in? If we were to reduce this tower, what would we be doing?
Yeah, so we did look at they did submit, I believe, for the lower heights, and I'd have to go back and look at it. I didn't know that we were going to be talking about this, so we'll be prepared to talk about it at the next meeting, but we did look at the lower heights they did submit. And that's how the 100-foot came to be. So lowered from 150, they did look at a little bit lower even, and so we did look at those. We did look at
The submittal, if I remember correctly, and Mr. Kenny can correct me, the submittal at 80 feet did not adequately provide the coverage that they were trying to solve the gap for. It provided some service, obviously, but not all of the service they were trying to fill the gap for, which would mean potentially down the road another facility in order to resolve the gap that you created by reducing the height of this tower. So we did consider the material that was submitted, and that would be the net result of that would be, yes, if you built it at 80 feet, it would provide some coverage, but it would still create a gap in service for either coverage or capacity that would have to be remedied at some point in the future by another facility or increasing the height of this tower.
There's a gap analysis here. There's a trade-off between height and coverage.
Right, exactly.
Are we getting 90% of it? Are we getting 50% of it? Is there a way of understanding what that trade-off would be? Well, I'm just trying to get to something where, like, all right, if they go to 80 feet, they're getting 95%, or what's the degradation? Is there that's just another piece of it's another piece of information that we can get. I'm just trying to go after what pieces of information would be useful that we could get. If that's something that exists in the current documents that it needs interpretation, that's a pretty easy thing to go over. And
okay.
Probably
in terms of the panoply of designs, you have, I think, considered everything that is commercially available in terms of design.
I'm just saying, I realize that you're getting what you can get out of the antennas. I'm just saying that if it was lowered and they couldn't fill, let's say, 100% of the gap, what percentage of the gap are they filling? What's the loss? And maybe that's the trade-off. And to having a less visual tower.
Even to back up a second for this, this is this is really good. This is a really good point. But my question is back to the A or the C. If we vote positive or negative, does it in any way impact our ability as a board to then further discuss these things?
Well, there's further discussion that will be coming related to your special use permit and site plan review criteria, which also have elements of the consistency with community character and, reducing impacts. So they are discussed again in similar contexts when we look at the criteria.
So regardless of A or C, they still get discussed.
Yes.
So I'm just going to ask a question then. What's the difference between A or C? Practically, what does voting A or C mean practically in terms of what we can or can't do? I don't understand yet.
When you have an environmental impact statement written, it's a document that's usually focused on the impacts that you have identified. In this case, it's visual. It would have sections that characterize the area. So to kind of set the stage of what's taking place, it would look at typically, like, the photo simulations and the view shed analysis are often components of an environmental impact statement. It looks at cumulative impacts. It looks at alternatives. So it would present data that would either refute or give you more information about those visual impacts, and it would result in the end. There's two components to it. There's a draft environmental impact statement, and then public input is required. And there's the final environmental impact statement incorporates responses to those public input that's been received. And the process ends with what's called a finding statement. And the finding statement comes from the board, is basically now you've looked at all of the data and you've evaluated the cumulative impacts and looked at all of the range of alternatives, and you reach a certain conclusion that you're going to pick a certain alternative because it mitigates more impacts, or whatever the end feelings about what you've learned about from the data in the environmental impact statement. The finding statement then puts you back with maybe more definition of the siting or other options that can address those impacts. And once seeker is done, you go back to talking about your site plan and special use permit criteria.
Everything you
We want to get him down here?
Like, who's the responsible party for creating the impact study?
They're generally the applicant. And then there's opportunities for the board to hire consultants to review it on behalf of the board.
John?
Yeah, I want to get to your, I think I understand what your question is. So there is a Venn diagram element to this, to the extent that there are some impacts that are considered both under seeker and under your review of the site plan law. Okay. The difference between the two is that there's a separate set of standards under seeker. For instance, you're down to talking about the issue of magnitude and determining significance using the criteria that's been established for reviews under the seeker law. When you get to the site plan law, you'll be looking at some of the same issues, but the rules that'll apply to your analysis in that instance will be the rules that are set forth in the telecommunications tower section of the zoning law.
Okay, that makes sense, but I could just be a moron. I still don't understand what difference a pos deck or a neg deck makes if we still have all this stuff available to discuss.
So in the big picture, what the idea behind seeker was that the state wanted us as a community, wanted us to be able to identify adverse environmental impacts and deal with mitigating adverse environmental impacts at a point in the review process that's at the very start, so that mitigation takes place at the earliest possible juncture. And then after that happened, the idea was that the process of environmental review would result in design changes to the project that so the project that walks in the door ends up walking out of the seeker process a little bit different. And then that post-seeker design walks into the
site plan review.
Right, exactly.
Okay, I got it. All right, that makes total sense.
Don't walk away yet. I wanted to make a comment. I think reducing the tower 20 feet opens us up to that other option where a carrier can come in and say, hey, I want another 20 feet. And we're back up to 100 feet. I can't think of the term.
The eligible facilities request. Well, that's That's always there as a possibility because it's a possibility that's
Right.
provided in the law.
But we can't consider that, right? Because it's
No, we
not.
No,
can't.
no.
But like,
Right, we can't.
But if
consider
we
it.
reduce it to 80 feet, there's a better chance somebody's gonna come in and do that.
But the question I'm asking though is just what is the impact of reducing it in terms of what's the loss to the coverage area so that you can understand the magnitude of that. You know, and I'm just, again, the point of this is really just to see what other pieces of information we could get if we were gonna go ask for.
I did find, so there was a letter from Cityscape back in August of last year. This is, as far as I know, how it was discussed, and Cityscape, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it says, regarding tower height, the propagation maps show that an antenna centerline height of at least 95 feet is required for Verizon to provide reliable coverage in the intended service area. Furthermore, any co-located carrier below 65 feet antenna height may experience marginal signal strength due to the terrain obstructions such as trees and hills. A 100-foot tower would comfortably accommodate a total of 4 commercial wireless providers, the co-locations. That's what was addressed. It doesn't go into 90% or anything like that. But I just wanted to.
I guess.
Yeah.
Like a third is what Verizon wants.
Right.
That's just saying that's what they need to do what they want.
Right. And I'm looking at the trade-off between visual
Yeah.
and so.
But I don't think that.
And none of that matters, I think, if we vote A or C. Is that correct?
No, I think it does, because if we vote C, then we can say, hey, these are the things that we're curious about, these are the things we want more answers to. I'm really interested about the public piece that Nan was talking about, if there's something there, because, we all know that that's been a large part of this process.
So-
Then, I don't know,
So if we vote B, there can be no more public input?
we're not allowed to vote.
I mean A, I'm sorry.
well, on this particular, question.
No, the public hearing isn't gonna be closed. We have to do site plan and special use.
Right, so what I'm getting, what I'm getting at is, and I keep saying the same thing over again, I just don't understand practically what the difference between A and C is, since we've spent so much time going over this already, we've sort of arrived to this point, right? And does voting A or C change where we're gonna arrive to in terms of mitigation? And I think the answer is, in terms of proposed mitigation, I think no, right? Because we've covered it.
But if coming out of that, there are design changes that could be done.
Right, but it doesn't preclude us from making those design changes, even if we vote A.
We don't vote A, we're still in C.
Right.
So if we vote C, we're continuing our C forward.
Yeah, the applicant will do the impact study. Correct.
Yes.
Right, but what are we getting out of the impact? That's what I was trying to get to. What,
Yeah, it would be I think practically it would be in a repetition and embellishment of the information that you have received in part. You've accepted accepted the studies that they've given you. So like, for instance, the visual simulations that have been done. I could foreseeably see an impact statement that looks at other locations that would look at the different extent of visibility. But you have a lot of the information that would normally be presented for your consideration. So I think that, there might be, if you were to look at a POSDEC and do a scoping, you would identify what more information is there, more in-depth information that you need to make a better decision in the end of what that ultimate design could be.
Now, on siting, you brought up that issue. I mean, we've been told that the site is the site. Are you saying there's an opportunity to consider other sites in this process?
That's usually part of an environmental impact statement, is when they look at alternatives for both design and siting.
I will add to that, however, that there are difficulties in that analysis would have to be part of an environmental impact statement, but the alternative sites have to be something that's feasible for the applicant. And that means that you have to figure out what's available. It can't be just picking a site somewhere else without regard to whether the applicant would be able to get availability.
That would be suitable.
Yeah, so it's not us to do that, it's the applicant to come back and say, these are.
An
Yeah,
alternative.
yes,
yeah.
so because that's the thing, we've been through that process.
Okay, you might be able to do that, but I would just ask you both to please ask the permission of the chair.
That's what I expected.
Okay. But I just want to say one more thing to, maybe this will clarify in your mind. So you're fulfilling two roles in connection with the review of this project. Seeker's a state law, and the state has delegated to local boards the authority to be the lead agency, okay? If you are, so what's the difference between a pos deck and a neg deck, right? What you're saying is at the end of your review pursuant to seeker standards, if you say there's a neg deck, that's your official statement as a lead agency that the project presents no significant environmental impacts. That's the result of your review. A positive declaration is saying that we conducted the review pursuant to seeker and we found significant adverse environmental impacts that require more study in an environmental impact statement. And that's our official statement on our determination of significance.
We have to enumerate those.
Yes, you do. Actually, every decision that you make as a board, not just in seeker, you have to provide a reasoned elaboration for the reasons underlying your decision, and you have to point to evidence in the record that supports those reasons.
So I think the difficulty is the same time you're saying that, I'm also hearing that we consider any past mitigations or in deciding whether we go to a positive deck or a negative deck.
Say that again, I don't understand.
That we're considering the whole of things that have been proposed in terms of changes or mitigations in determining if a positive or a negative declaration. So
Yes, because when you're looking at these kind of holistically, it's reasonable sometimes to have a moderate to large impact that is then mitigated by some sort of project change. So in the end, the process has resulted in no significant adverse impacts because they have already been mitigated.
Okay.
As compared to the project that walked in the door.
Right, all right. So it really comes down to whether we think that this has been mitigated enough. Is that?
Yeah.
So even if we think it's been mitigated enough, we can still ask for more mitigation.
I'm gonna say, yeah.
Well, I'm just talking out loud.
All right, I'm just trying to find the logical route here, if there is one.
If we think it's been mitigated enough, we would not.
Let me throw this out there. If the end result,
Mitigated, but not.
if the end result was to reduce it to 80 feet, does that make it less ugly? Does that make it less obtrusive? It's
Well,
still there. It reduces the coverage.
It reduces the visual coverage. Yeah. Look, I'm just,
Is it gonna prevent you from seeing it?
It is-
From 22? No. Is it gonna prevent you from seeing it from the other side? No.
No,
it's gonna be there. It gets to the point of diminishing returns that.
Well, again,
It has no use.
I'm trying to get to the point of what other things what other pieces of information could we have to make this decision? And that's just one thing. Is there anything else that we would feel that we would want to see, that we would need that changes anything that's been submitted? that's really what's going on to our. We have a document set of things that are submitted of what is there. Is there anything else that we think that can change that document set and mitigate impact? Whether it's worth it or not is a different question, but I'm just trying to get down to the, you know, what else is in the environment out there that people would look at or call for or pull it, and I don't, personally, I don't see anything else other than that, so.
Maybe the cityscape in their experiences have other ideas that haven't been already explored.
Yeah. So I mean, that might be a question in the cityscape. Is there anything else out there?
So, sorry, this is Elizabeth. They, you know, the applicant has looked at all alternate sites. They have submitted, you know, maps for the 95 antenna center line, 75 and 55, and we did look at all of that. And, you know, it is decreased significantly. And so when we made our determination for their coverage, for what they wanted for their coverage objective, 95 was the least, that was the lowest height to achieve what they were going for. That is that's what our determination was. Now we are looking at more nitty gritty because that's what you guys asked us to do. So we're waiting on some of those map files, but, and we will do that for the next meeting. But the applicant did already look at alternate sites. Our engineer looked at alternate sites. We also looked, I mean, our engineer, myself, Anthony, we all practically jumped into Google Map and, you know, traced your area, went around, looked around, and then they were able to make that determination. So I don't know that there's any other alternate site that would work for their coverage objectives.
You have like estimated radius that they could move into? I mean, is it small? You know, I would imagine for the thing to work, it has to stay very close to where it is.
Yes, and they did submit a search ring, you know, that was submitted, and based on the search criteria, in the area in which they were looking at, this was the best location that they found.
In terms of the panoply of alternatives, I think we threw out everything that we have seen in other jurisdictions in terms of design ideas for rural areas, for example. You know, I drive up and down that stretch of road 6 months a year to get to Wassaic. I know it well. I know that stretch of road exceedingly well, almost too well. So this location is the most feasible one for the applicant, obviously, because they were able to find a landowner willing to lease them the property for this facility, and presents the as currently designed, presents the alternative that, at least in the discussions to date, the board finds to be the most palatable in terms of design.
John or Nan, if we were to vote for a negative declaration, what does that preclude us from doing going forward with site plan and special use? Is there anything that's going to cut us out of making any kind of other changes?
So what it'll mean is that going forward, the rules of the game will be governed by the town of Ancrum site plan requirements and the town of Ancrum special use permit requirements for a telecommunications tower.
In telecommunications law then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Telecommunications.
Yeah.
Oh, ours, right. Ours
Yeah.
and the TCA of 2019 and the
Yeah.
SCAS rules and.
Yes,
all
and I
that
mean, the federal regulations that govern telecommunications facilities would apply during
As
that
well, as
part
well.
of the process as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what's the downside to a negative declaration?
That's for you to decide.
Yeah, I think we have to decide.
Right, I sort of, I agree with that question. What are we giving up by
Yeah.
a neg
Yeah.
deck?
I mean, the only thing I'll say to you is that I think the discussion you're having tonight is really good. You're talking about the things that you should be talking about. You're thinking about the things that you should be thinking about. You've kind of narrowed things, the analysis down to, a magnitude that's kind of at the center of it. And so, the next part is you have to see whether you can reach a consensus and make the leap to a determination.
I might just also point out that when you do site plan, your decision making and site plan and special use, you do have the ability to place reasonable conditions on an approval. It can be, so that is part of those decisions.
Okay. Should we poll the board to see where we're going? Does that sound reasonable at this point? Oh, I guess we want an N or a P.
Before we do that, what are the, so now we know if we vote in N, we know what's going on. If we vote a P, if we vote a P, what does that actually trigger in terms of reality? If we vote that it's positive.
The applicant you'll have to have a scoping session to flesh out the specifics that you want further analyzed. So kind of their scope of work. And then the applicant would need to go back and prepare that document and do those studies and there's a process to follow in terms of public input. Like I said, there's a draft environmental impact statement followed by public input and then a final environmental impact statement and a finding statement at the end.
Is the scoping session mandatory for this action, Nan?
I think so. I'd have to look that up, but I'm pretty
agree.
sure scoping is
Sure.
Yeah,
What
I
was
would
that?
agree. I think that's right.
Yeah.
It's mandatory. You got to do a
Okay.
scoping session.
Months and months of additional review here.
Yes, it's
Well, the time that it would take to, there's a process. Once the scope is finalized, it's handed over to the applicant, and then the applicant has to create the draft environmental impact statement, and that does take time. And then you review it. Your comments you review it, you get public input on the draft. And then the board's comments and the public comment gets delivered to the applicant. And then the applicant creates a final, which is supposed to react to the board's comments and the public comments. And as part of the final, they're required to individually address the comments that were raised to the draft. And then you issue a finding statement. Excuse me, a finding statement, which is you reviewed the final, and it's kind of your final decision on seeker. This is what the project.
But if we move on to site plan and special use, we still can talk about camouflage and we still can talk about power.
I think that the content of the Ancrum telecommunications law and the site plan review law allow you to. Those are criteria under those laws as
If we
well.
wanted more information, we don't have to do a positive deck, we can ask for it.
Yes, as long as you understand it's within the confines of the rules that are set forth for site plan and special use permit.
Okay.
You have to remember that seekers it's it's a statewide law and it applies in jurisdictions where there's no telecommunications law. And also ones like yours where you have a fairly detailed telecommunications law. And sometimes seeker is the only, and if we go into really rural communities, you guys think you're rural, but if you go into really rural communities where they don't have zoning and some of them don't even have their own little site plan laws, seeker is the only game in town for trying to look at some of these things. And so although it may seem kind of redundant in some senses in this application, you have to realize the statewide context of it because it performs a super important function. Because a lot of times it stands between just doing whatever you want, which hasn't been demonstrated to be good in the judgment of many communities. But anyway.
So. If we go forward though, like then, like what you said, we'd be looking at camouflage and height versus if we say, no, we need to do the review, that's looking at additional design. Like, if we,
No, that
that would
doesn't,
change.
no, that doesn't preclude us from looking at anything, right?
So there's a set of, in your zoning law, there's a set of criteria that have to be met to get a special use permit for. And so you're gonna take those criteria and apply them to the design that's before you. It'll be the 100-foot monopole design and then you'll decide whether the criteria have been met or not. I don't have at my fingertips
right,
you know, what all the different
right, but we're not abdicating any of our responsibility by being a neg tech. We're just sort of,
you're carrying out what's essentially, if you think of it, a different review. You take in the project and when it first comes in, you're putting the project through the sieve of seeker, which has its own standards and its own rules. Then when you move to the local review, then you take the project and you're putting it through the sieve of your telecommunications law and the zoning law and the site plan review.
What if we did 2 towers that were shorter and we could use that?
I mean, that's not in front of us. And they'd have to be a distance away, so.
I mean, but it is in the next phase, though, it is something, a mitigation could be talked about. That's not.
I don't think we could talk about
I don't-
anything that's
yeah.
not on the site. Can we review anything that's not on the site?
That's the whole point of it, is to ask those questions. What does 80 feet look like? What does 65 feet look like? What is?
Well, no, I'm thinking about, we're going, instead of going against SEQA, we're going against the telecommunications law and the zoning law. So we get to use those tools.
Yeah, I think your review would be for that site and not
Yeah.
somewhere else.
It would be for that site in the application. Yeah, that's true.
And I also wonder if I might just take the opportunity to explain that because it might be clearer in the context of the discussion that we're having now, but you've heard me say to you that, well, there have been comments that have been received from the public that are directed at that are asserting that the project doesn't meet the requirements of the Ancrum telecommunications law. And I have said to you, yes, we're going to take those comments. We're not addressing them right at the moment because we have to get through the seeker part of the process.
Right.
So what we'd be doing is we'd be moving on then to the zoning law and the zoning law criteria. And then those comments are things that are going to be germane to your analysis in that part of the project.
Right. Okay.
So where we left off,
NRP.
NRP.
Well, after hearing everything and understanding this better, I don't think there's value I don't think we gain anything valuable out of a positive. I think we can gain more information out of negative and still move it forward.
I'm thinking.
gain any, or, you know, does it meet the criteria? And, I asked all what we have done. Looking at it from different angles.
Can you speak up a little? We can't hear you. I'm sorry.
But the mitigation, then I would vote for a negative declaration.
Yeah, I'm for a
Okay.
negative. I'm for a negative deck. Jessica,
Pause for me.
we have 3-1 and
Did everything, so.
Yeah, I'm still I'm still deliberating. If we say positive, well, at this point it doesn't matter because it's 3 against 2, but if we say positive, which we can't now, it just triggers, is it what Jess said, that we can just say, hey, what about doing 3 shorter towers? Or does that, I'm just curious, like, you know what I mean? Is that something, you know, if this got a pos deck, are we then able to say, hey, look for 3 60-foot towers? Or does that have nothing to do with it?
You're asking me, I can answer, but.
Yeah.
Yes, there's an alternatives analysis that is a mandatory part of an environmental impact statement. Okay. But the alternatives, there are constraints on that analysis because you can't just pick
Right.
someone's property and say, well, you know, the planning board's decided that you have to
Right.
spread the towers over these other properties.
We can't put it in Dutchess County?
Right. So feasibility is a big element, and there's a rule of reasonableness with regard to that. So it's not a open field.
Right. So we can't just sort of invent our vision of what this should be. We still have
Correct.
what we have.
And it's not your job as the board to be designing the project.
Right.
You're-
It's our job to be just looking at what's in front of us.
Exactly.
May I make one response to add on to that? Okay. You did also hear from your expert tonight who said that the lower tower height was reviewed. So from our standpoint and from your expert standpoint, there would be a loss in coverage along 22. A significant loss in coverage would be lower.
No, I think we'll get that and tell us.
Right. Yeah.
So ask that question I just meant.
Right.
The going to a difference of 3 50-foot towers. Right now, we said that there's a loss in coverage if you go down.
If I could, I haven't spoken with you. So I wanted to answer your question.
yes, please, brief. We're already.
It seems like we're asking
clock
whether or not we
work.
want more investigation or not, and that's not what secret is. In order to say a pos deck, it's not, hey, I want more information. You have to make an enumeration of your determination that there's a significant impact, right? You would need to be able to articulate that for the legal record in order to then do that. You know, yes, even if there was a neg deck, we'd still be able to look at all the things you want to look at. You know, and whether it's the character of the community, that's still things that you can consider potentially as part of the other application process. You know, the rural nature, rural communities deserve cell phone service too. And this isn't an industrial smokestack, like you were saying, a cement plant or anything. It's a commercial operation, but it is something that rural communities need as well. We're able and willing to do more, answer more questions that you have after this process. But we need to get to that point where we're talking about how this applies to your code. And we've been at this step for far too long. And we need to get to the next step at this point. So we're not going to say that the conversation's over and we're not going to talk about alternatives or anything anymore. Obviously, it's been submitted. We can go through and present that and talk to you more about it. But in order to have a pos deck, you need to be able to say why it's a significant impact right now as it is. And that's what the scoping would have to go into. There'd be nothing new for me really to submit to you. All it would do is take a bunch more time and money, which we're basically already over the shot clock for federal law anyway. And we're not. Well, we've adjourned it, but we can.
The shot clock is not a bright line. What happens under the shot clock is that a determination to get made by the court as to whether the board's done a diligent job of trying to go through the. And we're not.
Okay, let's not get guys, let's not get into a debate about the shot clock. We're trying to move this forward.
Yeah.
That clock is wrong.
Yeah. I mean. That clock is wrong.
Feels like I've been here forever.
Yeah, I guess if a pos deck doesn't really buy us anything, and I guess I'm gonna have to say it's a neg deck.
Okay, so, man, we made some progress. you'll be preparing what we need for a neg deck.
With John and Kim, yes.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
Johnny.
With John and Kim.
Yes, obviously. So. With all that being said, thank you, board. For all your patience and attention and time. Get us to this point. I hope it's appreciated by all, but certainly by me. Is there anything else we can do tonight? I'm sorry, I'm not here.
Is this a workshop or a?
This is a workshop. The next Thursday is the public hearing. So,
Not public, but at a workshop, you don't. We didn't vote.
I think I understand the question.
So this is a workshop meeting. The vote that was taken by the board is a straw vote so that they can give the consultants instruction that they need. But what will happen is in collaboration with me, and we'll draft a negative declaration document and it'll be submitted to the board for adoption.
Let's go one more chance to change.
hey. So that all being said, there's nothing else we can do this evening. I'm sorry. Public comment, no, next meeting?
Yes, we.
That's what he asked.
Public comment, maybe public hearing and continue that third. That'll happen before the actually doing the make that. Yeah.
We are not going to have the neck deck ready tomorrow.
Next week.
Yeah.
Meeting?
No. Gotta be. So you took a while to get here and it's been a complex decision, and that's going to have to be reflected in the document. And it's very important that the document be done properly in a way that's going to withstand any potential challenge. And it's going to take, we're not going to have, I mean, to have it ready for you for Thursday means we really have to have it ready for like Tuesday of next week to be able to circulate it to you. So that you can read and understand it before the meeting. We're not going to be able to do it.
No different than that.
Yes, it is. It was a very good try, and then ordinarily we'd like to do it, but it's just not enough time.
Final words.
We appreciate that, but you just have to talk about it's only been extended to March 6th. So is there any potential, not lose steam again, our main focus for getting the secret the trees. Is there any potential to have a special meeting before we get to April and then we're running into that problem with trees?
Well, there's a pay to take them off next week's agenda, the meeting. If we're not gonna accomplish anything next week, why?
Well, you have it on for a public hearing. You need to take public comment. I mean, that's a very good.
We're fine with still coming to March 5th to take a public comment. I'm just asking for maybe an additional meeting. Just so, yeah. Well,
I guess we can, let's see how much progress they can make. I'm not saying we won't do it. Okay, let's see.
that you know our investment in the region, right?
I can appreciate the back if you wish.
Yeah, we want to say our bats.
I don't want anything to do with that. So that being said, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the workshop meeting on Homeland Towers.
All in favor? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
I.
Thank you, everyone.
You.